than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. He wrote that in his book, The Astonishing Hypothesis. But if Hawking and Crick and most other conventional scientists believe that they themselves are biochemical robots with no souls and no free will, then who do they believe wrote their books? Was Hawking's grand design book merely a spontaneous regurgitation of neurological ricochets cascading through his head without any intention behind them? And if so, then the book must, by definition, be a mindless account of physics. Or more precisely, in writing that human beings are biochemical robots, Hawking hasn't merely lost his mind, he never believed he had one to begin with. To call Hawking mindless is to agree with his own hypothesis. This isn't a verbal snipe at Hawking, by the way. It is a highly accurate description of his own beliefs, practically in his own words, as you will soon see. To further support the notion that human beings are all biochemical robots with no minds and no free will, he offers a rather faulty argument, saying the following. A study of patients undergoing awake brain surgery found that by electrically stimulating the appropriate regions of the brain, one could create in the patient the desire to move the hand, arm, or foot, or to move the lips and talk. From this, he leaps to the conclusion that we have no free will. This is a fallacious and illogical argument from the outset. I can tie a string to your toe and pull it around as if you were a puppet, but that doesn't mean that you can't decide to move that same toe on your own through conscious intention translated into your human body through your brain. The mind, you see, works by being translated through the brain, which is a biological organ. The brain, in turn, controls the physical body. But artificially inducing a muscle movement through the electrical stimulation of the brain, or the muscles themselves, only proves that there is a biological component to our existence, not that the biological component is the entirety of our being. For example, if you capture my remote-controlled helicopter, you can easily cause the rotor motor to turn by applying electrodes to the motor's contact points. But I can also control those same motors on the helicopter by broadcasting a command signal from my controlling device located some distance away. Your ability to artificially induce motor activity through the use of electrodes does not disprove an internal, even an invisible, command link to the same hardware. The only thing the brain stimulation experiment demonstrates is that the hardware of the human brain can be artificially stimulated. Well, that's not surprising. It says nothing about the software, or possibly even the computing cloud, that is also capable of driving that hardware through free will. By Hawking's argument, the fact that a doctor can hammer your knee and cause a literal knee-jerk reaction somehow bolsters the false belief that we have no consciousness or free will. It is a baseless argument. Lest you think I am misinterpreting Hawking's conclusion on this matter, he sums it all up nicely with this statement. It is hard to imagine how free will can operate if our behavior is determined by physical law. So it seems that we are no more than biological machines, and that free will is just an illusion. I couldn't explain it any more plainly. Like the majority of conventional physicists, Hawking believes we are deterministic robots who lack free will, consciousness, and anything you might call a mind. This belief, as you will soon see, is a very dangerous belief. It has huge implications for the very way we value life on our planet and throughout the universe. The dangerous philosophy of determinism. Determinism is an extremely dangerous philosophy because, by definition, it absolves people from all responsibility for their own actions. If you believe in determinism, you are logically forced to believe there is no such thing as a criminal, because those who choose to commit violent crimes are merely biochemical robots who pursue such actions through no fault of their own. They can't help it, in other words. Determinism is the magic get-out-of-jail-free card sought by every defense attorney, who was trying to get his murderous client declared innocent. The frequently invoked plea of insanity, of course, is a classic citation of brain-based determinism. It seeks to absolve the criminal of his actions based on the idea that he did not have any presence of mind in committing those crimes in the first place. He was not, in essence, self-aware. His criminal actions were merely the result of biochemical cause and effect, his lawyers would argue. Now, Hawking believes we are all effectively qualified for that same plea of insanity, because in his mind, we are all deterministic biochemical robots who have no free will, no consciousness, no soul, and therefore no responsibility for our current actions. But what about future actions? If we are biochemical machines, it would seem that we could be held accountable to pre-crime. Because, as Hawking openly states, if we knew the complete molecular state of someone's brain today, we could perfectly predict every thought and action they would take in the future. Thus, by accurately assessing someone's brain today, with a brain scan, for example, technology could pinpoint exactly who would commit a future act that would break society's laws. That person could therefore be arrested for having the present state of mind that doctors claim would lead to future crime. This leads to an absurd ethical contradiction, which means that people aren't responsible for their present actions, but they can be held accountable for future actions they haven't even committed. Such is the distortion of determinism. But the belief that human beings lack souls or consciousness is dangerous for a far more serious reason. It can provide a scientific basis for the commission of heinous crimes against humanity, including genocide. From Hawking's point of view of soulless determinism, there is no reason why the United Nations, for example, can't reduce regional overpopulation by simply committing genocide against human beings through population reduction programs. Because humans aren't real people with souls and consciousness, the poisoning of them does not violate any real ethical boundaries, according to that line of thinking. This is not an outlandish scenario. Currently, the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, operates a mass avian euthanasia program in the United States called Bye Bye Blackbird. Under that program, the USDA poisons literally millions of birds each year and engages in the routine extermination of cougars, falcons, owls, foxes, beavers, wild pigs, and other animals. This is all carried out under the presumption that animals have no consciousness, and thus murdering them is of no ethical consequence. If the United States government already engages in the murderous management of animal species that it perceives as becoming too populous, then by extension, the same approach to managing human populations would quite easily be justified under a philosophical belief that human beings are mere biological animals too. This is just one of the many reasons why this idea that human beings are mindless machines with no consciousness or free will is the perfect pretext for the mass killing of human beings by any government that embraces this thinking. That's one of the many reasons why Hawking is such a dangerous person. The wrongness of his ideas are only matched by the influence of his writings. The very fact that he is so widely respected is what makes his ideas so potentially dangerous, because at any point, a government could latch on to his human beings are not conscious philosophy and commit heinous genocidal acts while calling it all scientific and clutching Hawking's books as if they were Bibles. Adolf Hitler would have welcomed such a philosophy, of course. It's all the easier to poison millions of Jews if you don't think of them as human beings and instead consider them to be mindless, robotic machines waiting to be exterminated. If Hawking's book had existed at the time of Hitler, Nazi crimes would have no doubt been carried out under the name of science, and the idea that Jews were mere soulless animals to be exterminated at will would have been branded a scientific idea as well, and anyone who opposed that idea would have been called unscientific. Behind every madman, there is a distorted philosophy that denies people their humanity. Stephen Hawking turns out to be a strong proponent of this very thing, denying people their humanity. It is no coincidence, by the way, that science, which gave us the atomic bomb and other technologies with which to carry out mass genocide, has also given us the philosophical pretext under which that genocide may be justified. Remember, too, that on the first page of his book, Hawking complained that ethics hasn't kept up with physics. But a closer inspection of the subject reveals quite the opposite. Physics actually hasn't kept up with ethics. The recognition of the existence of free will and consciousness is the foundation of compassion for all living things. It is the core principle from which the vast majority of ethics spring. No human civilization can achieve lasting peace without the acknowledgement that human beings have consciousness and free will, and yet these are the very ideas that are now branded as unscientific by the vast majority of the conventional scientific community. And they didn't just leave God out of their equations, you see. They left out our humanity as well. Under the brand of science, we are all meaningless, soulless, biochemical robots who have all fooled ourselves into thinking that we are somehow self-aware.